to AutoSave. I'm Camille Salazar-Hadaway here with my co-host, with the mostest, Mr. Nick Andrade.
Still don't know what that means, but I'll take it.
I don't know. I mean, you're the most cool in the room.
Am I?
We'll let you believe that.
That's a Cam. I don't think you've said that very often, that I'm actually cool. And if I do say I'm cool, normally you say you're not cool.
I don't think I say you're not cool. I just say nothing.
She thinks it. All right, she thinks it.
That is very much true. That is very much true. But you know what, Nick?
Yes.
Today we're here in the studio.
We are. I love being here.
I love being here too.
Yeah.
And you know, when we're in the studio, special things happen. And this is a very special episode because, you know, AutoSave is pretty much a video game book club. Usually we cover games chapter by chapter, every episode breaking down each chapter of the game. But there are so many games that we want to play and so many other games that we play outside of the games that you see on AutoSave or here on AutoSave. So we thought, hey, why not talk about some of those in mini episodes? And this is a little mini episode of AutoSave where we're going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Yes,
You have been waiting for this.
I've been waiting. Your girl managed to pull in another Zelda game here on the podcast. And really what we're going to be doing in these mini episodes is talking about our overall impressions of the game, diving in some of our first impressions, and just some of the things that we are excited about with these games. And we hope you enjoy that too. So without further ado, Nick.
Yes.
You're like, yes.
I do want to say, though, there are games that not necessarily fit the format of a book club. And I think The Legend of Zelda is one of those games because it is so vast. Yeah. It is so expansive. You get lost. And it doesn't really fit a certain formula, right? Yeah. Which is what I think Zelda fans love most about it.
Well, I mean, there's no formula for how you approach Tears of the Kingdom because you are supposed to create your formula. There is many formulas to approach
as I found out.
Tears of the Kingdom. So we wouldn't say there's no formula. There are many. A lot of different formulas. So it's hard to go step by step with everyone. So I think this is a great format for that. Nick, you made it pretty obvious. I am a Legend of Zelda fan over here.
I can see you grin. You know, you have that either smile for the camera, but this one, it's like giddy glee that you have in your face right now.
It's just like, that's what's happening. Yes. Every time I think about the game, I'm just like, but for you, you are not the usual Legend of Zelda fan.
I'm not. I haven't played many. Mm-hmm. Skyward Sword, which we did on this show, is the first Zelda game I ever beat. Yeah. I've played some Game Boy Zeldas. I've played some N64 Zeldas. I've never finished a Zelda game. Yeah. So that in mind, Tears of the Kingdom, I want to finish. Yeah. Okay. And it is probably the toughest task of any game I've ever played because you could spend 200, 300, 400 hours in this game and still probably not find everything, correct?
That is very correct. You could go crazy in this one. And we were talking a little bit about this before, but Nick has a history with open world games of just not finishing them.
No, it's tough for me. I guess I'm again, I don't want to say I'm dumb.
I think it's more your will.
Thanks for covering what I'm saying.
I'm saving you. But I think what it is, what you're trying to explain is that you are very much like you like to get the information straight to you. You like to follow more of a linear story.
Yes. When there's a map saying go to point A to point B, and there are sprinkled in a semi-open world game where you can still go around and do some things, but it still gives you a kind of objective where you have to get there. Yeah. And I know Zelda has that as well, but it more so is the case of, honestly, just do whatever you want. And for me, and not that it drives me crazy, but I get overwhelmed. Yeah. And so that's why going into this game, I want to see if that overwhelms me. Yeah. Or if I can conquer my fears with an open world game.
All right, Nick. Well, this is probably the most anticipated game of 2023. Yes. I would say this is personally my game of the year for 2023. And really with Tears of the Kingdom, this is like just... a franchise first, a direct sequel to a game that a lot of Zelda fans have been very excited to jump into. I know when I was playing this game, I was like, oh my God, but this happened then and in Breath of the Wild. And, I was really excited about it. But I need to get your thoughts on the franchise. So you may not be too familiar with The Legend of Zelda, but why do you think this franchise is so iconic? And why do you think Link stands out as one of, I would say, the most recognizable characters in video games, one of them?
I think it stands out because I think they take risks. There's no, again, like this is the first direct sequel. So they've had many different games that have spanned decades, and they all have different storylines, and they all either start from scratch or whatever. But I would say what hooks fans the most, and again, what maybe deters me, is you have to think outside the box playing these games. They're not simple. They're not going to teach you what to do. They're not going to be straightforward. And I think that's what keeps fans staying playing this franchise for so long, is it's always something new. And even though you have maybe similar characters, similar lands that kind of reoccur constantly, there's always something that you can discover. And it's not just these games specifically on the Switch are open world, and some of them haven't been so much open world, but there's always so much to discover. And I don't know, whoever dives into a game, you never know what you're going to expect.
Yeah, you don't really know what you're going to expect. I think like you kind of really hit the nail there. It's that there's always a new experience when you're going into a Legend of Zelda game, as well as like really great storytelling elements. For me, it's really the music that stands out for this franchise. When you think you think of The Legend of Zelda, there's at least one soundtrack that really stands out for you that helps make this game or franchise so iconic. But we were talking a little bit about the fact that Link doesn't talk.
He does not, no.
And usually that is, when characters don't talk, it's because they want to help the player see themselves as the character. And through how you play The Legend of Zelda, whatever iteration of it is, there's certain challenges that you encounter that just feel rewarding, that really puts, it's like you're putting yourself in Link's shoes where you're like, I did that, I beat that. So I'm hoping, and I know for me playing this game, I felt a lot of that, and we're going to dive into that a little bit later. But I think that's what helps this franchise stand out as being iconic: the storytelling, the music, and then really helping the player feel accomplished throughout the puzzles or the dungeons that they're solving.
Can I add to that, actually? Again, not being the typical Zelda fan, I always think, well, is something successful still because there's a huge nostalgia factor? And for this, I honestly, yes, there is nostalgia involved, but the storytelling, the gameplay, everything around it, they make great games. It's not like they're just banking on nostalgia to rope you in. These games, anyone can pick up, even if you're not a Zelda fan like me, and be immersed in this world. So that to me is a credit to Nintendo and everyone around them who have always created Zelda games. There's never a dull Zelda game.
And it reinvents itself every time. With Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom showing back to back how two games that are staples now in this long-lasting franchise could completely switch things up, but still bring that sense of nostalgia, but also for new fans something completely different. But Nick, here on AutoSave, we do the question of the day before we dive into the meat and potatoes. Or I would say, I was going to say the Korok seeds, but they're not as hefty as like meat and potatoes.
Oh God.
So.
How many references are you going to be?
I know, I'm like trying to drop them all. But Nick, question of the day: in the Legend Tears of the Kingdom, Hyrule is filled with so many standout characters and personalities. So is there a character in the game that you encountered? You can't be Link or Zelda, but this character you would choose to be.
So there's two, and one of them I don't necessarily remember the name of. So you're going to have to help me here. But Purah is one. Actually, no, 3. I'll go with 3.
Oh, Nick.
Purah.
I have 3 too.
Impa.
Okay.
Which I think Impa might be on your list because
Yeah.
you're a big Impa fan.
I'm a huge Impa fan.
And then I don't even know how to describe this guy. He's like a shop owner, weird.
Oh, Beetle?
Beetle! That's who it is. Beetle to me is the strangest character
The Wanderer.
in all of Zelda, but every time I see him, it brings me glee.
Why? Wait, what
He reminds me of Waluigi a little bit, but also, I don't even know how to explain it. He just has a weird face. Every time any iteration of Zelda that I've played, he has a strange looking demeanor. Mm-hmm. And he's like a wimpy, elasticy. He's almost like, I don't even know how to explain. He's like Luffy from One Piece maybe a little bit, but like, not as strong and cool.
Yeah, no, he's definitely. I wouldn't think he's as strong. He's also a huge bug enthusiast.
Yes.
Are you into bugs, Nick? Am I learning something here?
No. I don't like getting a net and catching bugs.
Yeah.
But there's just something about him that he's just so weird.
Yeah.
That I gravitate towards him. But Purah, to me, in this game, specifically, is just a super badass character.
She's
super
so
smart.
Knowledgeable.
Yeah.
She's so knowledgeable. I would not be Beetle. But Impa was not on my list.
What?
I know.
What?
I know. She's older now. I don't necessarily want to be old.
Whoa. You just don't like old characters?
No, I like old characters, but I wouldn't want to be old. So I wouldn't want to be an older character. But then I kind of am old characters. All right, I'll tell you my picks.
Okay.
So I said a Korok. I mean, they're always traveling, trying to meet their friends.
I don't want to be a tree thing or like
what?
Yeah, they're like not tree people, but they're like they have leaves on them. I don't know, like you'd rather that than old Impa?
Yeah, because I get to like just travel around and also be saved if I get stuck. You know,
you're being more practical as usual.
I am being practical. I get to hang out at like little campsites with my friends.
That sounds fun. Yeah,
you know,
and you get to make that noise whenever Link.
Yeah, haha. Yeah. I'm really good at that. I practiced that a lot. You found me. Haha. Purah.
Yes.
Was
because Purah is younger, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. She got a lot of spunk in her.
All right.
You know? And then Hetsu, who is like the leader of all the Koroks, just because I like Hetsu's moves.
So would you rather be a Korok or Hetsu?
Hetsu.
You'd rather be Hetsu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely, because you get to All right, enough for nerding out for now because we're gonna dive in. We just dance our way throughout the episode.
Let's just do this for the rest of the episode and not say anything and watch the views tank. No, I'm just kidding.
No. We will not put you through that horrible performance. But what we will talk about is our impressions.
I'm excited
for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Also, shout out to Nintendo Canada for providing a code, Nick, for you to play as well. And, throughout our impressions here, we're going to try not to spoil the story too much because it is really something special, especially if you're a Zelda fan, that I think it is best left for you to explore yourself. And because this is so open world, there are very much so lots of other things to talk about. So right after this break, we're going to dive into dive like we're falling off the sky islands.
We haven't gotten to that part yet.
I know, but I was thinking it. We're going to dive into The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So unlike previous games in the franchise, the game picks up 5 to 6 years later. I'm just so happy because it's a sequel. Yeah. And it actually starts with Link and Zelda going under Hyrule Castle, looking at some gloom that is appearing, that some sort of poison that is getting the citizens of, Hyrule and Castletown like sick. Yep. So as they go underneath, we don't really see the common start to a Legend of Zelda game. Like Breath of the Wild, when you played that, you saw Link wake up.
Yeah.
you don't really see that at the start of the game. So it's, again, just cool things happening for Zelda fans. But we find a mural depicting what was an imprisoning war that is really setting up the story, which has been everything that, like, if you've been paying attention to the trailers, this isn't spoiler territory because it's pretty much said in the trailers already, but it shows this ancient battle with a demon king. And then as you go down those steps, you see a mummy with a hand like just on its chest. How was that going through that sequence? Because they're really setting up a story that, similar to Majora's Mask, it's very dark off the top of it, right?
I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what timeline we were in. I assumed it was a sequel to Breath of the Wild. That's everything that I saw. The trailers that I saw, I'm like, okay, this is a sequel. So I'm guessing I saw Link with the Master Sword. I saw starting with like 8 million hearts, where I was like, yes, I finally don't have to start from scratch, because getting hearts is so frustrating sometimes. So I'm like, am I just going to be this overpowered Link? So as we're going down, I'm not really sure what's happening. And then you see that skeleton that looks like to be Ganon. So I'm trying to put the pieces together, because I, again, didn't finish Breath of the Wild. So I'm trying to put the pieces together of what's happening. I think it's relatively accurate in terms of this takes place pretty soon after Breath of the Wild. And that you are the established, strong Link of 200 hours played.
You're the hero of Hyrule. You're pretty much the hero of this experience. I think it was really cool to see this like all-powerful Link, what you end with in Breath of the Wild. And he's really just there protecting Princess Zelda as she is going to figure out what is happening to her people, and really be a great princess, because, you know, you have Link there as her knight, essentially. But what was so cool about this was when this skeleton starts to react to the two of them being there and comes to life. You see Link take out his Master Sword and like go to, you know, attack it, and it just like breaks, and like it was just a really cool action sequence. Did it
go through?
It broke,
just broke right away,
and then a piece of it hit Link back, and then, you know, soon after that you see that Princess Zelda has vanished. You know, once this upheaval has started, you see the skeleton come to life, this upheaval happens, and Zelda falls but also vanishes, and this arm saves Link. And then we get, hey, now the game's starting. Link is waking up.
He does
from
wake up.
Asleep. So I love how they gave us that like little prequel at the beginning that, you know, you're not really used to seeing.
Right. I was trying to understand what was happening. And I thought, was I missing something? Because what I assume at the end of Breath of the Wild, does
we're not spoiling.
Zelda and Link, we're not spoiling anything?
We're not spoiling Breath of the Wild for anyone.
I can't say anything then. So putting the pieces together, I'm confused. I'm like, why is this skeleton here? What's this hand? I knew that the Master Sword was going to get destroyed, because from the trailers and from the pictures depicted that I saw before the game came out, looked like there was trouble. So I was expecting something bad to happen. I wasn't prepared for any of this. I was literally like, what's happening? Like,
his hearts are going, and you're like, oh my god,
the hearts are going. I'm like, no, I have to get these hearts again. I thought it would have been cool if I started with the Master Sword somehow. I knew that wasn't going to happen, but it was a lot to digest. As, again, someone who didn't play much of this series, didn't know what was happening, but I was invested. And I was invested in what was going on. And I was like, what is this mystery? What is this arm, first of all? And we didn't even talk about it, but Link's arm gets fully cut off. And I'm just like, whoa, is this PG-13 Zelda? What's happening?
It's really interesting how they switch up, because like his weapon of choice is the Master Sword. How's he going to wield the Master Sword at his best and his shield, his Hyrulean shield, if he doesn't have his arm?
Right.
So I like how they set that up. We then find out that the arm that saved Link attaches on to his missing arm.
Yeah.
And then he's left with a decayed Master Sword and some instructions from Rauru, the voice that you hear that wakes up Link, instructing him to explore the Sky Islands, which Link is on.
Yeah.
So it goes by so quickly.
It does.
But you're right. It does capture you right off the start because it's like, oh, they're really just jumping in here.
Also, I was upset that I would have to use sticks after that again. The arm's super cool, by the way. Yeah. I just kept looking at the nails. And I know Rauru is probably a different kind of being that doesn't look like Link.
Rauru has like claws.
They're claws, but it just threw me off. The nails. The nails just threw me off. I couldn't just picture Link with that arm, but it looked really badass.
Yeah.
I like that they did this. Mm-hmm. And I honestly can't believe that they did this.
Yeah, it's interesting that like they're changing up like how we see this iconic character they're changing his arm. And like there's a lot of debate in the Zelda community, like because Link, when his first iterations, he's left-handed, right? And then it was switched up. Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah, in Skyward Sword because of the remote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it kind of stuck that iteration.
Now I remember in a lot of the games I played, he was left-handed.
Yeah, whoa. So it's like now that they like got rid of his arm, something that's like kind of talked about with fans. It's like, oh, we're going to this other new iteration of Link, which is really cool to see. But that's pretty much sets up the story. We are on the Great Sky Island with no Master Sword. It's shattered. We have no idea where Zelda is. Yep. She's vanished.
Yep.
And who is Rauru? We don't know, but that is the story that's set up for you to explore. And trust me, it is a really good story, especially if you're a longtime Zelda fan.
You're so nerding out right now.
I am. I'm like, I'm drooling.
You're just talking about a game that you already played, but you are so invested.
But what I want to talk more with you, Nick, about is, you're coming into this new open world Zelda experience. You played Breath of the Wild, but now you have this new land to explore, the Sky Islands. That is your first encounter with this world. What were your first impressions going around the Sky Islands? You were afraid that you'd have to battle with a stick. How did it feel when you had to pick up that stick and actually battle with one?
I was just afraid to fight any enemies at all. I was hoping that they wouldn't show up, which for the most part, there's not many.
There's not many, but you do have the constructs who turn out to be like this civilization in the Sky Islands that for some reason sees Link as a threat and does attack you. How did you handle them?
Died a few times. Again, like, this game specifically, I don't want to go too far ahead, but out of all games I ever play, I might die the most in Zelda games.
What?
I gloat a lot on this series that I usually am overpowered with a lot of bosses in the games that we play. Because
you always do the side quests before doing any of the story.
This is harder to accomplish, and here I died so many times. And again, it's Sky Islands. I'm afraid I'm going to fall, which I do.
Yeah.
Again, going into these games, I'm a little, not skeptical, but overwhelmed already because I'm like, what do I expect to happen here? Because I'm not really good when there's no instructions. But I seemed pretty capable here and helps you along the way. But I just want to mention the Skylands in general, really beautiful. Like the atmosphere, I don't know, all the scenics in this game is pretty breathtaking.
It is breathtaking. But it's also like, this is going to sound so odd because it's supposed to be airy.
Yeah.
But it's very airy.
Oh, it feels so airy.
Like it just feels so like freeing to be that high up. Like you could see a little bit of what's happening below you in Hyrule, but then it's like, it's just so liberating, like how they set up this, like how they set up the story, and then how you're like, just go and explore, you know, which you got a little bit in Breath of the Wild when you jump off the like dive after the tutorial.
Yes.
But it's like, it's just kind of like, yeah, I think with that, and then with being that high up, it is really freeing. And like, really, it's yours to explore. So on the Sky Islands, you do get pretty much the main abilities that you'll have throughout the rest of the game, other than auto build, which you do pick up later in the game. And then there's some other cool things as you unlock the story that becomes a part of your arsenal. But for the most part, you have Ultra Hand, you have Fuse, you have Ascend and Recall to go through the Sky Islands, and it helps you understand how to use each of those abilities with, you know, going against enemies. You said this is like the game that you would most die in. How did you find utilizing all of those abilities to firstly traverse the world, and then we'll talk about how you handle the enemies with them?
Traversing. Okay, so I have questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Reverse though.
Bring 'em.
With these abilities, something like Ascend, is that something that's been around in Zelda games before? Because when I got it, I was like, this seems new.
Yeah, it is completely new. Okay. You know, when the trailers dropped, I think that was one of the things, as well as Link not having his arm, that stood out, is the fact that Link was partially through a cliff, or like whatever they were showing. I think a lot of people thought at first it was like reversal of time, but it's this new way to understand how you could go through the world. Like for me, Ascend really is that ability, especially there's some caves that you came across while you were playing, where you dive deep into these caves and you may realize there's an enemy that you can't face. You're not just at that level that you need to be yet. Or it's just like, man, this is going way off track than where I wanted to go because I'm trying to continue this story. Let me put a marker here and let me ascend out of this cave.
You can do that?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Nick.
I could have, you know how many times I ran out of caves just running, and I would put my camera back to see, and the enemies were still chasing me?
Yeah.
I could have just ascended.
For no reason. You could ascend. Just ascend right out of there.
That would have made my life so much easier.
And you could also ascend into battle. Like that's another way to use it as well. Like if you see bokoblins and they have like their like tower or their little hut, and you want to figure out what's going on, you could ascend up, take a little sneak preview, decide to not go for the battle, or come out and surprise them. So it's a completely new ability that does shake it up a lot in terms of how you encounter things. I think you have more control because you could decide to encounter something or not to, or just to say, hey, I'm going to come back later.
I know you mentioned traversal. I do want to mention in battle, but traversal wise, a lot of fun. This is, again, I think this game really hooked me with these abilities. The fuse ability, so much fun. Creating carts, giant bridges, and also the weight of these items that you build, they feel real.
They slow you down.
I built a giant bridge.
No, you didn't.
One time with like 5 or 6 logs and 2 logs on each side. And I lifted it to try to get up to a cliff. And the weight of it would usually sometimes collapse. So I had to find a way around that. And nothing comes simple. But the fuse, I was still able to make crazy designs. And that bridge actually ended up working. I managed to climb it enough that I could grapple on to or connect to a rock and then climb up. And I couldn't believe it. But I had so much fun with these things, especially with like the fans that you can move and you can make cars that kind of drive away. It feels very technologically advanced for this age.
Yeah, you said you made a car in order to traverse a little bit.
I did. I tried to drive it off a cliff into the water. Didn't work. It got stuck. But again, like these small, minute details with all these abilities it's not like it overpowers everything. There's still the laws of nature that come into effect in this game, which I really like that they do.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see as well, because I think my first interactions in the game with these abilities, I was going through the world as I would in Breath of the Wild. So I was making sure that I had a lot of stamina because I thought I had to climb a lot. Yeah. I had to, make sure that I was wearing the right gear in case it rained so I wouldn't slip off the cliff. That frog suit is a good one to have in those situations. But then I was like, wait a second, I could use Ascend to get higher up on cliffs or like mountains if there's like a little point sticking out and I'm able to ascend that high. Or I could actually use like fuse in order to fuse multiple items together to see if I could create a bridge, whatever that may be. And I think it's like, that was probably like my first 20 hours of playing the game where I was trying to figure out why it felt like it was taking a little bit longer than it should to get to places. And it was because the game is forcing you to think differently than if you would when you were playing Breath of the Wild. So it's like, don't think you could climb that. You can if you have enough stamina, but what is going to make it easier for you? And it is creating those vehicles that maybe it's like, okay, I'll go around the cliff. Like just go up and it'll be so much faster, or maybe it is just ascend. Yeah,
with Ultra Hand and Fuse, I managed to build my way out of certain situations where I probably in other games wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
Finding new, like specifically in Sky Islands, when I was searching for, I like to always go in every crevice and see if I'm missing anything, which is hard to do in this game. But
you're like, I'm really trying to focus on the story for Tears of the Kingdom. And you're like, by the way, searching all every crevice.
Yeah. There was like these, I don't know what they're called because they might be Zonai related. Mm-hmm. They're like these bricks that they're like levitating. They're like these giant scalable things. I don't know how to explain.
What? Is it like the ones that fall?
Yes.
Okay. And then you could use recall?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So there were 4 of them.
Yeah.
And then there was an island that was by itself that I could see had a chest on top of, I think there was a few enemies there. Mm-hmm. And I could see the chest. I'm like, oh, I gotta go get it. So I went and I jumped on these blocks and then I got there. And then I beat these guys, got the chest, went back, and then I realized that these blocks were too high for me and I couldn't even use Ultra Hand to bring them down.
Oh, that sucks.
So I didn't know what to do. So then I built a giant bridge again, climbed a rock, jumped, and I still had enough stamina left, jumped and grabbed onto the block and got up. And it took an hour and a half. And I just wanted to do that. But like, this is what this game does. And I think maybe that's the reason you're talking about it feeling slow is because I feel like there's little minutia that you want to explore before you even tackle anything in this game, which is something like that. It took me an hour and a half, but I still kind of had fun doing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when, well, that's the thing. That's the trigger for me. When I feel like it's feeling slow, like if I'm going against a puzzle a certain way, I'm like, no, this is not the way they wanted us to go and like try to get to that point. It's like, there's something here I'm missing. And then when you figure it out, it's like, oh my gosh, this feels so good to figure it out. But that also goes with the vastness of Hyrule. You know, once you start the game and you leave the Sky Isles, you're able to jump into Hyrule. But Hyrule's not the only thing. The Sky Isles are not the only thing. No. You also have the depths. What was it? What was going through your mind when you saw that map?
I didn't think it was that big.
You didn't think it was that big?
But I don't remember how big Breath of the Wild's map was. But I'm like, this seems manageable. But you don't have a horse right away.
No.
You don't have a paraglider.
Yeah.
So I was trying to run around as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But the vastness, I didn't feel overwhelmed at this point, if that makes sense. I guess being in Sky Islands for as long as you are, getting your abilities, talking to Rauru, feeling like you're doing some sort of missions, I didn't feel lost.
Yeah.
And so when I got to Hyrule, I guess maybe that's why I didn't feel overwhelmed, because I had already explored Sky Islands a bit, had some missions, kind of understood what the plan was to do in terms of who to meet, who to speak with, whatever. So I didn't feel overwhelmed in that case. So the map to me didn't feel as big, only because maybe I felt I felt bigger, smaller, bigger.
Oh,
in that moment.
you felt bigger in that moment.
Yes.
Exploring. See,
I felt
felt opposite. I felt so overwhelmed because I was like,
but you know what to expect.
Yeah, but no, because like the map of Hyrule has changed a bit. Like I had all these questions. I'm like, wait, where's the divine beast? Like what's happening? I had a bunch of story questions, but then I also saw new things like how far the Sky Islands went, that they completely pretty much cover all of Hyrule and that you could explore at any point in the Sky Isles. And then once I continued playing, I discovered the depths. And the depths is that one thing that I never want to be in. Like the music changes, it gets real dark. You can't see anything. There's gloom all around. And the enemies are so hard. I just was like, wait, where do I start? Do I start exploring Hyrule first and then go back to the Sky Isles, or then go, to the depths first? Like I was like trying to prioritize. And usually on autosave, I usually do story right away.
Yeah.
This is a game where it's like, I'm holding back the story. Like I did not do the story right away.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, no, I want to figure out what's going on. Like I want to see how much it's changed. Like usually that's why Zelda games I don't usually stream.
Yeah.
Or like share that experience too much, because it's usually for me. So I like to take a lot of time. I took a lot of time.
I think that's the best part of it though. I played a lot of this game on handheld mode, in bed, on the couch, whatever. Didn't necessarily like playing it on my TV as much. I liked just having it as the handheld. I think that's the case in point too. Like sometimes you do feel like you don't want to stream it because it's almost like your own adventure.
Yeah.
And no one else, I think that's the beauty of these Zelda games, is no one else is going to have the same experience. Yeah. It's all going to be different.
It is going to be very different. And there's going to be a lot of distractions as well. So I want to ask you, was there like one moment where you were like, oh man, I'm so distracted right now? I'm going to go over here instead of continuing with what I want to do.
The prime example, it for me, because I don't really necessarily know how to best play these games, it's trial and error.
Yeah.
And so for me, the thing that stands out is going to Lookout Landing. Once you're in Hyrule, talking to Purah, you have to go meet Captain Haas. And so I went to go meet Captain Haas, but I couldn't figure out how to get to Captain Haas.
Yeah.
And that is what led me to ending up, again, I have 4 hearts at the beginning, end up in the depths. There's gloom everywhere. I don't know what's happening, but I feel like, okay, if I can get to this area, then the enemies aren't going to be that bad. I found the enemies. They were one-shot killers. I was lost, had to find my way back. I think I had to restart a save point at some point, but I just not that you waste so much time. I don't want to say that's a waste, but there were times even in Sky Islands where I found a cave out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was a little hole in the wall. And I think this is what makes this game so special, and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, is you can discover almost anything. And again, maybe it's overwhelming. I'm trying to reel myself in and not think of how overwhelming it can be, because you can find these little scenarios that maybe someone else can't find. And looking online and reading things as well, people finishing the game saying, oh, I didn't get to do this, and then another person saying, oh, but I did this, but I did that, but I didn't do this part. Like, you can finish a game and there's still so much. To me, I don't want to give this a glowing review, but like, that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
For someone who doesn't like open world games, to be able to find all these special places is really cool. And who cares if you're wasting time and not doing the main story, because you're going to spend so much time having fun.
Yeah, it's all about the discovery. Like, I feel like there's it's like an endless amount that you could discover. For me, it was like at the stables. I forgot which stable I was at, but there's recipes that are hanging on posters that you can try to make. And every time I would, like, if I'm missing an ingredient and I'm like, oh, I know where to get this ingredient, I will be on my way to get that ingredient and then find myself like, wait, what was I just doing? I'm in, like you said, I discovered 3 different caves. I went down the well instead, right? So for me, that's like, that was my moment of like, oh no, like there's so much to discover. And then I would have to, also another thing, looking in your camera, like setting pings on the map.
Yeah.
Bless that system, because it like just makes it so much easier. But then when I would open up my camera to set like the main pings, I will see something in the distance and I'm like, well, now I got to go there. Yeah. Now I just can't leave that. Yeah. I got to go there and see what's happening. So that, you know, I welcome all of the distraction, especially when it involves just fun moments like that as well. Yeah. Now, so we talked about the vast world. Yep. We talked a little bit about the enemies that we encountered, but let's talk a little bit more about our battles, because we do have multiple abilities that we could use. I think a lot of the ways that people are naturally thinking of how to go against battling different enemies is using your fuse to make weapons and going after it. I want to know for you, what was your favorite weapon that you made?
Specifically the cobbled crusher.
You like named it?
Anything one, I think it's like a mace type thing that you can fuse together with one of your swords or a stick or whatever it is. Love using that, but big weapons. Yeah. Broadswords with boulders, just anything that I can get my hands on that swings really far. A staff, attach a rock, attach whatever, another piece of whatever. It doesn't matter. Anything that had a long reach that I can just swing. Yeah. And not have to worry about dodging as much, even though it's slower, obviously. Yeah. But then I would just run away. But those were my most fun things to use. Attaching, it's not really fused, but attaching things to your bow, using bombs with the bow. I know that's something that's always been in Zelda games, but is so rewarding in this game, especially if you're like facing a boss. You just shoot an arrow with a bomb and a bunch of enemies just go flying everywhere. It's just fun. But this is I want to get to your best fuse item.
That one's hard because I don't even think it's like for my favorite fuse item has nothing to do with battle. Yeah. It would be actually fusing a cart onto a shield. So I learned from a friend that you could do this because I didn't know you could do this. So when you're in the mines, you could actually fuse a cart to your shield and then pretty much shield surf through the mines, which makes it to me a lot easier to go about everything. But then the other thing I would say, there's so many fuse things that I like that have nothing to do with battle. Yeah. I would actually say my favorite battle mechanic is recall, because you see those bokoblins, they're throwing rocks at you. They're trying to throw all these things at you. And I like to keep my distance for them. I always try to go stealth into combat, although it's very hard to do. Sometimes they just blow that horn and then, you're just like, they see you. Yeah. But if you use recall when they're throwing stones at you, it just goes back, like boulders or whatever. It just goes back and hits them.
Yeah, I didn't get to experience that as much. I saw a few videos of that, which is hilarious. Yeah. I think.
And also putting a boulder to my shield.
I liked putting the flame emitter on the shield. When I first did that and I figured it out and I could shoot flames through my shield, I was like in heaven.
You're like a flamethrower on my shield. Honestly. It's perfect.
But I guess I wanted to ask you, using abilities in combat for me is tough. Okay. Using recall, ascend, I didn't even again realize that I could use it while I was trying to escape something. That's the problem I had the most with the mechanics of switching with the left D-pad into whatever mode you wanted to use, going into battle. And I know a lot of these battles you need to have those abilities to defeat these enemies, because you can do crazy things, as we've seen like on TikTok and stuff like that. The amount of crazy abilities that
people are making mechs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I struggled with the most. When it was combat time, I always, in my head, just went straight to combat. I always sometimes forgot about the abilities, which was a detriment. They become
secondary to you in battle.
Yeah, so that's something I had to get used to over time.
Yeah.
Which I still don't think I'm fully used to, but I guess I wanted to know your opinion on it, because for me it was a struggle.
Yeah, I think because I played a lot of Breath of the Wild, it came as second nature to me, so I don't find that as a struggle. I think more what it is like when you're fusing your items to your arrow. Because then it's like you have to go through a list of items, especially as you collect more and more. That it's just like, oh, wow, there's a lot. There's a lot of items to go through here. Especially if you want to get more creative, like if you're putting like a bokoblin horn or a construct horn or something on your arrow.
Yeah. And especially if you're in the middle of battle, you get a little stressed trying to sort out what you need. And a lot of times if I'm looking for like a bomb, I might just switch over to something else that's useless.
Yeah.
And then that happened quite a bit.
And it like, I think I threw like a hot pepper instead of the fire fruit at someone, like at one of the bokoblins. Well, one of the enemies. I can't remember if it was bokoblin. It might have been a Lionel. But I was just like, take this. And like, it was supposed to be like a really cool moment. And then it was just a spicy pepper.
Any ego that I've had in any games possible, it's non-existent in these games.
You can't have that.
I just suck.
Especially when you're going up against the Gloom Hands. So this was when you're the first time I encountered Gloom Hands. These are like big, giant gloom. Like, I was about to say big giant hands.
Yeah.
These are big. Well, they are big giant hands, but like the sky changes color. It gets dark. The music plays, and like it's preparing you for this encounter. It's kind of similar to Breath of the Wild when you would first encounter a guardian or just encounter guardians, and the music changes and all that stress is just heightened in that moment. The first time I encountered Gloom Hands, I had nowhere to be like, there was nothing in my arsenal that would have prepared me for this encounter. I was leaving Lookout Landing, and I think I was going towards Castletown ruins, and all of a sudden the sky changed. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Like, it's getting dark around here. And then I go, and the music changes, and this huge thing with like a bunch of eyes just appears. I still get like so scared when it happens, even though like I'm well equipped now to deal with them, but I found them so hard to deal with. I think I think it was after maybe the 5th encounter with the Gloom's Hands. I was like, okay, I think I have it down packed. You need bombs to go up against them, and you need really good aim. You can't have, because you know how I like crack under pressure of combat. I do that time and time again. I scare myself. You can't. You have to be confident. Was there any boss for you, or like any encounters where it was like, oh, this was really hard?
I would say my first experience with an actual boss was Battle Talus. If you're Lookout Landing going, I think, again, I was trying to figure out how to get somewhere. I ended up going right from Lookout Landing, and then I stumbled upon this giant rock, and it had a bunch of bokoblins on top of it. And I'm just like, okay, what is this thing? Like, are they just hanging out there? And then I got closer, and then it started to move. And then I spent maybe like 15, 20 minutes trying to figure out what the mechanics are of it. I got rid of the bokoblins just fine. I used some bombs with my arrows. That kind of destroys them pretty easily. And then it was this whole thing of having to hit a certain spot on the Battle Talus to like make it stop. And then using your paraglider to get on top and attacking the stone that's on top of him. It took me 20, 30 minutes to understand how to do it. But I think this explains well these boss fights in these games is there's always a mechanic that you have to figure out in order to defeat them. It's not a hack and slash. And I don't think there is any hack and slash in Zelda games, period, unless you're just dealing with regular enemies. But there's always a strategy involved in bosses in Zelda. And that is kind of the first encounter that made me realize, okay, I really need to put my brains here apart from just trying to swing and miss, because you can't even attack it otherwise.
Well, and you have to make sure you have like the right equipment to attack it. So like that spiked like
the Cobalt Crusher.
The Cobalt Crusher, like that would actually
Cobalt
be
Crusher,
Cobalt
sorry,
Crusher, Cobalt Crusher.
Cobalt,
It's made out of cobalt. I think like for that, like there is no one way to go about it, but there is something you have to unlock there in order to strategize against any enemy. And it's like you have to go through multiple interactions with that enemy to really lock down how to take it out. Even with the bokoblins, like you'll have like, I'm gonna call them bokoblin herds. You'll have like one bokoblin herd or a mob goblin herd, and you're trying to figure out like how to go about the interaction because there's so many of them. I've died quite a few times just trying to break down that science and every herd is different depending on what combination of enemies is in there. So it's like really trial and error. But again, when you go through it, it is so satisfying. Another satisfying moment, which I'm gonna like, were you gonna say something?
No, I was gonna say it's satisfying too with those mobs when there's an unlockable chest. So once you defeat them, it's like a nice reward. Yeah,
I would also say like the at the stables when you feed the dog so many apples, it takes you to a little chest and you're like, super that's cute, great. That's cute. But another rewarding moment.
Yes.
Definitely has to be dungeons and puzzles. For a long time, Zelda fans, puzzles has been essential to games and experiencing the games. That feeling of accomplishment is definitely heightened when you come across a really interesting dungeon or puzzle. One that really stood out for me is the Wind Temple, because it's this cool mechanic where it's like it's in the sky isle or it's up in the sky aisles, like big, like higher than that, or like, but you have to go there, and then there's these boats that are floating around in circles. And you have to jump on a boat in order to propel yourself up even higher to jump on another boat. And you're pretty much trampolining yourself all the way up to progress higher and higher. At this point, I did have another ability that unlocks as you progress through the story. So the Tulin's power that helps you go a little bit further when you're propelled up in the sky. So that was really cool to see a different type of dungeon than I would have thought. I think this is something that the game does really well, is like really experiencing or experimenting with how you could use your abilities that you get off the top of the game, or these abilities that you unlock through the story in order just to get into the dungeon.
This is, I think, the biggest problem I have with these games.
What? That is the best thing.
I know it's the best thing, but I can never think outside the box with these things. I struggle with temples, with even certain shrines where I can't figure out what I have to do. And then when I either look up online, I'm sorry, or I figure it out after 20, 30 minutes, I think to myself, maybe it was simple, but my brain isn't even thinking to do that. This is what makes these games so special, is they're able to do that, where you have to really put your thinking cap on in order, like what you just explained. I didn't do that.
I mean, I was also stuck there for a while. Let me just say, like,
I know, but you're able to do that. For me, it's really difficult, and that's why, like, you need to have a lot of patience.
You do.
If this isn't your style of game, because sometimes it's really smart and sometimes it's really simple, but you just can't think of what to do. Like even smashing open a cave entrance that you didn't realize there was a crack on the side that you could actually open up with one of your fused weapons. Stuff like that. Like
I think that's something that's like, because I've been playing Zelda games for so long. You expect it, right? It's like I'm always looking for the environment to help me solve a puzzle. There's this one, oh my gosh, there was this one puzzle. I swear I spent an hour trying to figure it out. And I definitely like it's kind of embarrassing because I should not have spent an hour trying to figure out this temple. But yeah, it was a temple where you have like different spheres that you have to fit into like its socket.
Oh,
right?
I know all about that. Yeah.
So this one, I forgot the name of the temple. I should have wrote it down, but it's like 10 different sockets and only 4 spheres. So I'm there trying every single socket.
Yeah.
Different combinations. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, there's nothing in this environment that's telling me how to place these spheres. Like, I don't get it. Like, I was on the verge of crying because I could not figure out this temple.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think I was like out of like a grunt of frustration. I like moved my joystick.
Yeah.
Like just like everywhere. And then I noticed on the roof, there's reflections on certain of, oh my gosh, there's reflections of certain sockets. So those are the ones that you put the spheres in.
This is why in this game specifically, I look on the roof all the time because there's always something.
Yeah.
I always, even looking for chests, I go 360 and then I go up and I look around. Okay, nothing. Okay, I can move on. And that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, you definitely have to be more aware of your environment in this game, and especially like think creatively. I think with our builds, we talked a little bit about like the crazy things that people have built. You built a car. Was there anything else like crazy that you built?
No, other than like that 20-foot bridge. But I've seen the builds that some people have created, just incredible. Like I wouldn't even think that you could do that in this game. Like you said, like a giant mech. But things like that are possible. And they do leave lying around certain items that you're like, oh, wait, maybe I can build something like that. Like if you see a wheel somewhere here and then, oh, look, is that like a branch that I can do? Okay. And then you start putting things together. I'm like, oh, that's how I created the car. I was like, could I make a car with these wheels? And I'm like, I don't think this is going to roll. Like, how is it going to work? And then I put it on something and then it started rolling down the hill and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I can actually make a car. And so then I'm like, what else could I make really big? And so I tried to make even bigger cars. And then I tried to build giant ships with like 5, 6, 7 fans on them and see how fast it can go. Cool. But like, again, it's endless. And it's not only beating the story, but you can just spend time doing
just that.
Anything you want to build. Yeah.
You could just spend time building the whole time. For me, it was like building things that I didn't necessarily need. Hold on, before I go into that, I do want to say, like you mentioned, like they just leave these items around for you.
Yeah.
Right? Which it's like sets you up at first to think, I need to use this. Which you don't always need to use those items, but you can. There's an option, and it's not just one type of thing it would build with that combination of items.
Yeah.
You could build so many different combinations with the things that they give you. So I think that's cool. Also, you know, on these sky aisles, you discover Zonai devices that come in a little like gumball type machine.
Use those.
And you could carry those around. So I was carrying a ton of fans with me everywhere, and actually just saw a video of someone who went through a temple. This is a temple where it's like water, like just spanning so far that you have to construct something in order to like a boat, essentially, in order to go across. But this person did it in a way that I haven't seen anyone else do it. They used a fan, like just a single fan, and put it upright, hit the fan to let it go, like the battery run.
Yeah.
So it's on. Then used Ultra Hand to move it over a ledge, like high above a ledge, and then move it back, and then stopped it, used recall, turned the fan on, stood on the fan, so it carried them further, and then they just paraglided the rest of the way. I was like, I would have never thought of doing that. Like, that is just a simple way to construct this contraption using a combination of your abilities. But for me, I would build things that I didn't necessarily need in the game.
Yeah.
Specifically, and I know I said I wanted to be a Korok if I could in this world.
Yeah.
Specifically, just to see what I could do with the Koroks. One of them being a giant rotating skewer that had Koroks on it.
No, you did that?
I did.
I've seen some skewer videos where they were doing it to, I think, some enemies.
I did it on the Koroks, and you see these little sweat marks come out of them.
I think we need to record your gameplay here. I want to know what other savagery you did. I would never do that to those poor Koroks.
You would if it just crossed your mind. You're like, can I?
You know me. I'm always the good guy. I could never do that to those nice Koroks.
I'm usually always the good guy. But this one, I was just like... Take a look at
her eyes right now. She's got some crazy eyes going.
No, but this one, honestly, I don't know what it was. I was just like, man, it was, you know what? Trying to see what's possible. That's what it was. Like I put Koroks on like the little wings, like the wings that go in the air on the Sky Islands, just to see how far they go. And then I would drop to Hyrule. So like I had sent the wing off in Sky Island with the Korok on it, and then it'll drop because there's no more battery. Yeah. Then I drop down onto Hyrule. Mm-hmm. The Korok's there.
Wow.
Crazy, right? Or like I was on my way to help a Korok. Like I was on my way to help a Korok and lightning struck and hit me.
Yeah.
And the Korok. So the Korok like went somewhere, rolled forever down a hill. And then after like I changed into the rubber suit, the frog, the rubber suit, I like ran down and I was just like, it is still like it fell off like at least 2 cliffs.
Did you?
I was like, I have no idea. No, I didn't save it. I put a marker. No.
Wow.
I just put a little leaf marker, and I was like, I'll be back for you later.
You can tell that Cam is a kid in a candy store because she keeps going over and over her stories of her experiences.
I know. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, this is the show.
Well, let's talk about the characters a bit.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about a world that is filled with very eclectic personalities in them. We talked about Beetle briefly.
Yes.
One character in their missions, or like you have multiple missions. So you have like a lot of side quests that pop up based off the characters that you interact with, going on like raids with a bunch of townspeople or the monster hunters is one of my favorite things to do. One of the new features of this game that I enjoy so much. I think that's really cool. Just as Link is a knight and he has this like reputation in Hyrule to fight alongside the other people of that are trying to take Hyrule back for themselves. But another character interaction that really stands out for me is my boy, Addison. Addison has been holding up signs
He's a weirdo.
throughout the game for Mr. Hudson. What like firstly, what is Hudson paying Addison?
$60,000.
We always have this question about characters in the game, how much they're being paid to do tasks. This is definitely a free thing. Addison is so over the moon.
It's a
volunteer, just wants to make Hudson proud, and goes to the worst places where no one will see these signs that Addison is putting up. Because no one's going at the top of a mountain. Only Link will go there.
Exactly. But Addison will.
Addison
will do anything.
Addison will. I love Addison, but he does seem so defeated if you don't prop up his sign properly. You have to prop up his sign to make sure it holds so he can let go and properly bolt it down. And he's so defeated when it like you don't do it properly.
I didn't even know what he wanted. When it fell down, I just like, okay, well, so what? And I kind of, the first time I left.
You were just like, so what? He literally screams like twice.
I didn't understand that he wanted me to help him. No. I thought it was just like an oh well situation. The second time around, I went back. I'm like, there's there's something here that I can prop it up. I didn't even know. Maybe I was glossing over what Addison was telling me because I didn't think it was important, but. And then I was like, this is pretty funny.
No. You told them to look into my eyes because like I have crazy eyes right now with the Koroks. You say you want to be a good guy.
Yeah.
But if your man Addison's like, hey, I'm just propping up this sign.
I didn't kill Addison.
I have no abilities. Yeah. I'm up here in the freezing cold. No abilities that could help me out here. You're not a good guy because you didn't think about it, okay?
I thought it was a random task. I had no idea what he wanted me to do. I didn't kill him, okay? I didn't spear him and rotate him 30 degrees northwest on a fire pit to roast him succulently.
All right. Well, we'll agree to disagree. But there's so many characters I have to talk about.
You put it to one or two.
I know. Okay. Last one. I'm going to talk about Yonobo because this is one of the things with having a sequel that I think you could, and when they write it so well into the sequel, characters that are familiar. If you've played Breath of the Wild, Yonobo is a character that you interact with in the Goron City, who was a kid at the time Breath of the Wild happened. Yeah. And now he's kind of a jerk in Goron City because something is happening there that is changing everyone around you. You have to go on and discover through that storyline what is happening. But it's just so great to see like these little reminders of like how things used to be in the previous game, or like, you know, if you see characters that look a little bit different.
I enjoyed interacting with my boy Robbie.
Robbie,
Yeah, he was a cool guy to interact. He seems like not a hothead, but he's always all over the place, and he needs a little. Joshua needs to temper him down a bit.
With this, there's also, you know, the world is just so vast. You have the world of Hyrule that I think is a character on its own.
Yep. On
top of the characters that you interact with, you have just these huge worlds, but you have this beautiful music as well that accompanies that.
Yes.
Were there any soundtracks that really stood out to you?
I wouldn't say stood out because I don't know the differences. Like if you go to Lanayru or you go to wherever, are those tracks normally the same? Is it a different spin?
Depends on how far you get into the world.
Yeah.
Into those places. So like if you're in the city or in the temple, then it'll change. The music will change.
Yeah.
But if you're still on the outskirts, then it's pretty much the same music in Hyrule that cycles through.
I'm going to give a stock answer here because it fills me with glee every time I hear it, which is do 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 do. That's it. Every time I hear it, it means I solved something, which Nicholas needs a high five for because I normally can't solve those things. But specific, again, there's nothing that stood out to me that I'll remember, if that makes sense. And it's not in a bad way. It's only because I'm not so used to these places that I was more focused on playing the game than actually hearing what I was playing. If that makes sense. And especially when Link isn't talking.
Yeah.
Then I start to kind of glaze over.
Really?
Sometimes when I'm reading also.
Oh.
Because I realized, I guess, and I'm not even a Gen Z, I'm a millennial, but sometimes I need the voice acting, which they have in this game.
They do, yeah.
But only for certain situations.
Yeah.
It's not all the time.
Yeah.
And so I tend to lose myself both with the music and reading. Because one, I'm just trying to figure things out. And so I never really processed the music. I processed the surroundings because I always had to figure out what to do. But the music never really came naturally to me.
Ooh, I love the music. I find it's the perfect backdrop for discovery. And it's just like, it's just like that the little changes and throwbacks to old Zelda games that like just really stand out for me. But you know what? We processed quite a bit.
We did
process quite a bit. So let's finish up processing right after the break. All right, Nick, we talked a lot about The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, I'm excited, but I'm going to pause on myself to let you give your overall thoughts of your experiences in the game.
Again, I'm coming from a place where I don't play many Zelda games. My main experience is just from last year playing Skyward Sword, or 2 years ago. I don't even know when we played it.
What year is it?
So a lot of my references come from that. Also, I'm starting to think that this is a prequel to Skyward Sword because everything from the story that I remember, and I know the developers and the story and the people who created the story and everything, they're saying that it's not that close, like the stories aren't that closely tied together or whatever. But I believe, from the Sky Islands and everything that happens, that this is some sort of prequel to Skyward Sword. So that's my guess. But anyway, coming from someone who does not play Zelda games, strays away from open world games, didn't really play through Breath of the Wild. I think I played 15 hours and it just kind of went to the wayside and I never picked it back up. Also, my brother, by the way, 200 plus hours into Breath of the Wild.
Oh, wow. I think I remember you telling me about this.
I told you this, yes. Yeah. And he hadn't done Tears of the Kingdom yet because he was afraid that his feelings of how much he loved Breath of the Wild would be tainted from Tears of the Kingdom. Oh. So after playing Tears of the Kingdom, I told my brother, honestly, you're missing out if you don't play this game.
Yeah.
Because yes, maybe some of the mechanics could be a little gimmicky in terms of like the TikTok world and trying to create these crazy builds. But overall, my experience, I ended up becoming a bigger fan of the series through this game because I didn't feel as overwhelmed of the vastness of it. I felt like I understood where to go in the stories, and if I wanted to, in the storyline, and if I wanted to stray off, I could do that, but I knew where to pick up. And I think the game did a great job at the start hooking me in because it didn't feel as hard. I felt with Breath of the Wild, it left you to your own devices really quickly. And I felt in Tears of the Kingdom, I guess with the kind of help of Rauru guiding you through and learning and unlocking your abilities all relatively quickly and then deciding to descend into Hyrule, it gave me an opportunity to take a deep breath and I felt like I was okay.
Yeah.
And that was important for me because, again, I'm not a Zelda player. So playing this game, I think the developers did a great job in hooking maybe potentially new fans or children to this series because I think they made it a little bit easier to get into. And there's still challenges.
Yeah.
It's still very challenging, but the beginning of it really ended up hooking me to continue and want to continue and not take a break from it because I felt like this is a challenge I can't complete, where maybe some other times I felt overwhelmed.
All right. Well, yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective because, you know, your experience with Zelda games, especially with Breath of the Wild, and like you just have that switch. I would say, like, I wouldn't describe it necessarily as easier to get started in the game. I think there's just a little bit more direction having Rauru there to help guide you with how to go through this new experience. Because I still even found, like, at the beginning of the game, going against some of the constructs, like if there were 3 of them, I was like, oh no, what to do? And I just have a stick. But I would agree, like, this is definitely, like, for your brother, please tell your brother to play this.
Please, Rod, play it.
Play it. Because I think, how do you perfect an already perfect game? That's what I thought Breath of the Wild was for me, as a fan. And it was a lot of people's favorite game of that year, right, when it came out. So I think it was like a hard feat from the beginning to go into a sequel for that game and try to be better than that or bring a better experience. Yeah. And it somehow did. Like, it feels like this is what, without taking anything away from Breath of the Wild and how it stands so well, but it feels like this was supposed to be what Breath of the Wild was. Like, the complete vision of what Breath of the Wild is. It brought all the physics that was established in that game for Hyrule and how you go around in this iteration of Hyrule, but also giving you the freedom to build whatever you want, to discover anything you want in this world. It just opens up a whole nother level of challenge and experience that I didn't realize I would cherish as much as I did. Because like you, I do play games mostly for the storyline. And I'm used to playing Zelda games specifically for the story because I really enjoyed linear stories, especially linear Zelda games. Yeah. But that departure, in Breath of the Wild was like just that tiptoe for me, and now I'm fully all in these open world experience with especially this franchise. Another thing, it's like then how do you also follow up on a franchise that's loved by so many with a story that doesn't necessarily interfere with if you just want to explore this world and go about it that way, do all the side missions, just see what you could discover. You'll see hints in there of like some things that are happening in the background of Hyrule that you're like, huh, that's new, or something's missing that was in Breath of the Wild where you're like, hey, where'd that go? That clue you in to guessing what might have happened with the story. But when you dive into really understanding where they're going with the story, it's really beautifully told. And that's then backed by an amazing soundtrack and great performances by these voice actors that just sends chills down my spine. I'm also getting chills right now talking about it because it is just something that's done so well that I love so much. And it's like you could go through like these experiences and it never felt repetitive to me. Like I never felt like I was going in a temple and it's like, oh, this is very similar to another temple. I think a little bit happened in Breath of the Wild like that, where I would maybe go across, like come across 3 temples that were maybe a little bit similar, but how they introduced the puzzles into Tears of the Kingdom, I really do feel like they were hearing fans out on wanting to create more complicated puzzles that would bring on more challenge. And they did that. And I'm so happy they did, because I still haven't come across something where I'm like, oh, I'm doing this again.
I do feel like the shrines, I enjoyed going to the shrines more than I did in Breath of the Wild for the small time that I played the game. But I enjoyed my experience.
Yeah.
Just a lot more in general.
I think it really does have to do with the abilities that you get in this one, because it is, you could use different combinations, like we said, to go solve a puzzle in different ways. Yeah. So it's like, it offers that, it actually breaks that cycle of repetition. Because everything's different. Like every temple, I really do feel is different. Everything's different.
Nintendo doesn't miss. That's clearly what it is. Anything that they make Zelda related or Mario related or whatever, it's always, 10 out of 10.
They really didn't miss this one at all. And I really am so happy I got you onto another Zelda game.
I'm gonna beat them all. No, probably not. But I'm excited to see where it goes. I don't know what's next.
You know what, Nick? I feel like we're going to have a check-in with you in our Discord.
Okay.
You're going to have to let us know how you're doing.
I'll take screenshots.
Yeah, please take screenshots. Yeah. Drop it in the Discord. Thank you all for listening. I hope you love our new mini episodes. I know that
mini?
They're like what? Maybe mini. We got to figure out a word for this.
I honestly think you could have gone... I think you could have gone at least 5 hours on this episode.
Oh yeah, of course, obviously.
There's so many little things that you want. Just next time, just don't kill all those Koroks. Okay? Please.
I didn't kill them. They were just sweating. Okay, I'm not a.
She ate them.
I'm not a Korok killer. Okay.
She cooked them.
No, I didn't. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to let us know what you thought of this episode in our Discord and find out how Nick's doing in the Discord as well. And stay tuned because we have so much more autosave. So we'd love to have you here to enjoy it.